I'm really glad you're here. Some of you are friends from the nursing community, from the National Speakers Association, my clients, coaching colleagues, advanced reviewers, which I really appreciate. But each of you expressed an interest in my book, which is why you've been invited, and I am so grateful. So I have a glass of bubbly in my hand, which is really Welch's white grape juice, but it will work and it will help me to celebrate. So again, we're all here to welcome to the big world of books. Are you ready to reinvent yourself? A post-pandemic approach to work-life balance. Those of you who know me well know that I'm really committed to the concept of work-life balance, and I became committed to it when I worked 100 hours a week, 2 hours out of every month for almost 12 years in the former Soviet Union or in Central and Eastern Europe. And when I missed a lifestyle event, I decided that I needed to get a life. And that basically began my whole concept of an approach to work-life balance. So reinvent, what is it? In reality, it really is a word. I have taken that word, and if you look at it, each one of the sections of this book begins with a letter in that word. So we have reflection, engagement, insight, narrative, values, experience, navigate or navigation, and then trusting the process. Here's some sample content that I'd like to share with you. Basically, think about it, pre and post-pandemic. Before the pandemic, maybe you had a job and maybe you didn't have a job. Maybe if you had a job, you worked 5 days a week, and if you were lucky, you got to work 1 or 2 of those days remotely. But if you were unlucky, you either had to work, and believe me, it was probably longer than 8 hours a day, but those days were long, and you worked hard, and sometimes you worked harder. And when other people were laid off or there were reductions in force, perhaps you had 2 jobs. Maybe you had too much to do, and Heather is nodding her head, too much to do and too little time, but you still were committed to getting it done. And then the pandemic comes along, and suddenly, for many, there were no jobs. There was no income. Everything changed, and everyone's future was upended. It became a real tough situation for so many people in my life, so many I know who have been hard hit and who have worked hard to regain ground and to become strong and to be able to survive and thrive. So think about how it was. Maybe you had kids in school, but maybe now they're not in school. Maybe you had elderly parents who were in good health, and maybe they're not in good health. And maybe you yourself are struggling or know someone who is. Think about what's on your business card. A business card is everything. I taught a class at Kellogg in Chicago once that was called Reinventing Yourself the Kellogg Way. And it was really all about the fact that if I was once the vice president of global affairs for Abbott, or if I was in charge of global distribution for Baxter, and I refer to them because there were so many big pharma and drug companies along that stretch of land in Lake County, Illinois, that was my identity. That was how people knew me. But if I lost that job, who am I now? What is my identity, and what does it say on my business card? And am I starting over? Am I starting fresh? Am I reinventing? One of my favorite quotes is from Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss has a quote for everything, doesn't he? As a matter of fact, our children were raised on Dr. Seuss. Many of you were probably raised on the same book, and maybe your grandchildren are still being raised on that book. So today you are you. That is truer than true. There was no one alive who is youer than you. We are all ourselves, each and every day, in each and every way. And so I take you through this book and through the 8 letters that address the word reinvent. And the last one I told you was trust the process. And in the section on trust the process, I give you 30 tips for 30 weeks. And you might think, why 30 weeks? Doesn't she know that there are 52 weeks in the year? And of course I do. But 30 is consistent or resonates with the word optimism in Chinese philosophy. And it's time for each of us to be optimistic from this day forward. Is it time for you to press reset? Are you at a point in your life where you need to rethink what you've been doing and perhaps take a totally different approach? Maybe what you're doing is working well. Maybe you need a business or a success coach. David Rothfield is a success coach, a business mentor who contributed one of the previews to the book. I appreciate that, but all of us at one time or another need to look at what we're doing and perhaps press that reset, not the button from Staples, but our own. So let's play a game. I'm big on games, and this is the game that I'm praying will work because it was such fun creating it and because Marla worked so hard on it. Basically, we've taken the names of the people who RSVP to this event, and Marla put them on a wheel. So go, Marla. And what is she spinning for? You remember that with the invitation, I said that there would be a $50 Amazon gift card to one lucky winner. Marla is spinning for that winner.
No, you're passing my name.
Yeah. That's usually Steve's line, Frank. Oh, Joanne, it looks like you're the winner. How exciting.
I would have
Joanne
bet
is
you
one of
50
my
bucks we
colleagues
would have
from
landed
the
on
Healthcare
Marla.
Business Women's Association and the coaching program. I'm so excited for you. Okay, so what do we do now? It's really important that a book have viewers. I've sent each of you a PDF copy of the paperback of the book, and if you didn't get it, please let me know and I'll send it again. But right now, the book in Kindle version is free on Amazon. So if you go to this page on Amazon, and Marla will eventually show you the link on the next slide, you're going to go to that and order that Kindle version. Make sure that you download the book to whatever kind of a device you have. If it's your phone, an iPad, a Surface Pro, a Kindle, whatever else you use. And then you log into your Amazon account. In order to log into your Amazon account and to write a review for someone, there are rules. And the primary rule is that in the past year, calendar year, you must have spent $50 on Amazon on a multitude of products or on one. If you're like me, you probably have contributed thousands of dollars to Jeff Bezos in the past year. Everyone is online shopping for everything. As a matter of fact, I read the other day that 70% of clothing is now purchased online. It's easy to send back. You can buy multiple sizes at once and try them all on at home and send back the ones that don't fit. So clearly, all of you will easily meet that criteria. Then you go to the order page that we shared before. You scroll down to the section that says Customer Reviews section, and then click on Write a Review. Of course, it's important to write some sort of a favorable review. And it's also important to assign stars. Those of you who have books in this space are very familiar with the process. We want the stars to be 5 and then review the product. And it says, write a customer review. When you write that customer review, if you've not done so before, you will get a message from Amazon confirming the fact that you have sent the review. And it will say something like, it's up for submission and it's up for review. So you submit it, they'll review it. They say that within 24 hours, they're going to notify you, but it generally happens within 5 to 10 minutes. You get a confirmation that that review has been posted on the Amazon page for that book. And when you do so, I will be so grateful and so happy that you've been part of the process and part of my success story. As I indicated, Are You Ready is now a series, and there are 2 books in the series. There will be a 3rd book before the end of the year. Right now, I'm really excited that you're here. I'm so thrilled to see so many colleagues from the nursing community, from NSA, my clients, coaches, friends, colleagues. It's really a joy to be with you. Let's open it up to questions and conversation. Questions, anyone?
Not so much. Not so
I'd
much.
like-
a question,
Go
but
ahead,
just a
Cheryl.
comment- Just a comment. First of all, I think everything you've done with this has been amazing. And I'm so honored that I got a preview copy the other day that I started to read. And thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. I'd like to introduce Cynthia Blossett. Cynthia started out writing some advanced praise for the book that became so praiseworthy that it was unbelievable, and it became the foreword in the book. And I thank you so much for that. She's a colleague for a long time, used to be with the Nursing Honor Society, is now independent, is a new fellow of the Academy. Has it been 2 years now?
2 years, thank you.
2
Yes.
years,
Mhm.
the Academy of Nursing. And I'm really pleased and so thrilled that you were able to do that.
It was certainly my pleasure, and I see Anne Marie there. Anne
Yes,
Marie,
you see, you know Cynthia, right? And Anne Marie also wrote praise, and so did Kimberly.
oh yes, what a pleasure! And certainly good luck, Sharon. Was a treat to be able to write the foreword.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Anyone else?
Sharon?
Yeah, Kim?
Yes, when can we get started with our review on Amazon? When is it ready now or?
I believe that you can do it right now.
Okay.
Okay. And I'd appreciate it. That would be great. And then Kim Snyder, you also had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I had a question. So, you have very different audiences. You have speakers here and nurses and healthcare, but who will get the most out of this book?
Oh, that's a great question. This book is for anyone, whether they have a job, they need a job, they once had a job, or they have an uncertain future. So look at the healthcare space. It's estimated right now that over 20% of healthcare providers who are involved in providing care during the pandemic will no longer be providing that care post-pandemic. They'll be moving on to different places, to different spaces, and to different things. What does that mean for those of us who may someday be recipients of care? There may not be enough nurses. There may be another cyclical nursing shortage like there is every couple of years that really does impact health and future and outcomes. For those in the business world, it's very clear from a standpoint of, yes, they may have had a job, but they may be dissatisfied with that job. They may, Kim, have been in a situation in which, yes, they have a job and they've kept it because there are no options and they're afraid to move on to something else. It's better to have one sometimes than to not have one. Although I've been in jobs where I was wishing it might have been better or thought it might have been better to not have a job than to put up with that nonsense every single day. But for those individuals as well, that might be an opportunity. There's a really strong section on business mentoring that David contributed an advanced praise to, and you read it, David. It's important for individuals to be able to, and David and Steve are both SCORE mentors, to be able to have someone in your life who can help to mentor you. So from a standpoint of job holders or jobless, there's that market. And then for anyone else, all of the moms, so many moms who had jobs and then became out of work as a result of the pandemic, don't know if they can afford to go back to work simply because of childcare issues. So that too has had a huge impact on our economy, on our future, on our presence, on where we are, certainly on our budgets and what we're going to do next. And then for those of us in the speaking community, over the past year, think about the number of live gigs that you had that either became virtual or were canceled. Candy and I formed a whole new entity and did a virtual conference in November for 2 days, and we'll do 4 separate days this October in order to be able to offer programming that would have been live had there been an opportunity to be live, but it's live but face-to-face with a screen between us. So I think that all of that has transformed. Bernice, have you seen a lot of that in your field?
Oh, absolutely. Most of the conferences now are virtual.
And Bernice is working in genealogy. Bernice and I have been friends since we met in, well, probably in Washington or Armenia or Russia or somewhere in 1992.
Yes.
It was a long time ago, and we worked for a long time abroad. And so looking at that whole concept and the movement that you've made a transition, a huge transition from the public hospitals to a situation in which you're doing amazing things with podcasting and with shows and with books and with conferences and all kinds of things. And Heather, what about in your industry? Certainly in a company that is based on grieving, how much grieving has taken place north of the border? What's going on up there?
We are in complete lockdown. We have been since 2 days after Christmas, 26th. We've gone into a complete lockdown. All of our kids are home. Essential workers only are allowed to leave the house for work. Pharmacy, medical appointments, and groceries are your only times you're allowed to leave the house. So it is crazy. Funerals, of course, are being done so very differently. It's very hard to connect with people because, again, you're not really allowed out. I'm sending a lot of my grieving pins out and sympathy cards and things like that. But as for, we haven't been able to cross the border for almost a year. The border's been closed for a year. So,
and in the middle of that, you had a knee replacement.
I did.
You felt the impact there, right?
Yeah. My husband dropped me at the doors and I saw him the next day to come pick me up. But yeah,
But that was it.
Yeah, so very different than
So
how
it
you're
is-
used to. So I've been off 15 weeks from work rehabbing. I go back next week and we run a COVID clinic and I'm really not looking forward to going back swabbing people for 8 hours a day and immunizing people now, I guess, if we
Yeah.
still have not got a lot of immunizations here. We had 500 delivered the other day and that's our first in our area. So we
and
are
that's
really,
nothing.
Any
That's
minute?
No.
a business.
Whoa.
And what town do you live in?
I'm in Sarnia,
Okay.
Ontario.
Okay.
Mm.
Yeah, Joanne?
I've got 2 questions for you, Sharon. I know this is at least your 9th or 10th book.
15, maybe 16.
15, I can't even keep up.
Many of them were textbooks that no one's going to read unless they want to know about IV drugs. Okay?
So one question is, I'm gonna just ask you both of them. One question is, how do you get your inspiration in terms of your subject matter for your next book or this book? And the second question is, because I know you enjoy writing, how long does it typically take you to write a book from start to finish?
I'm an anomaly. When I decide to write a book, I decide to do it.
Information comes from me.
Pardon me, the inspiration comes from you? I don't think so. With all due respect. There was a book that Anne Marie and I did for Sigma Theta Tau once, and I think we had 26 contributing authors from 30 different environments. And we finished that book in 6 weeks from start to finish. And that was dealing with contributing authors, which is even more difficult than writing it all yourself because you don't know what someone's going to submit and how many hours of rewrite it might take for someone, regardless of how educated they are and how much alphabet soup they have after their names. It means nothing when it comes to putting words on paper, especially when they're nurses, because nurses are very good at articulating what they do and how to do it and giving instruction to patients and others. But when it comes to putting words on a page, they talk in bites. Patient states pain, right abdomen. That's not the same thing as a complete sentence. So it becomes very different as you start to work on it. But I am an anomaly. So when I decide to write a book, I'm going to do it and I'm going to do it as quickly as possible. I will be honest with you. I decided to write this book on December 15th.
Wow.
Oh,
And the one before that, I think I decided maybe about 3 months before I finished it. It was just, it came to me, all the content was up here and all I had to do was put it on a page. I am at an advantage because I type really quickly. When I was growing up, my father said, learn to type, you'll never amount to a damn thing. And so in 3 weeks, I was much faster than the teacher and she threw me out of the class because I beat her. She just couldn't deal with me anymore. And so I can basically now probably type about 110 words a minute, maybe more, but I used to be at about 170, and that's pretty fast. So I can type faster than I can write. And because of that, I put those ideas down and they just flow. In general, most of my content comes from life experiences, the experiences that I've had or those around me have had. This whole concept of reinvention, I probably have switched gears and changed jobs multiple times. Some of it came from living in I think 7 or more states in 16 plus houses and changing communities and changing jobs, but always using my nursing platform as a way to advance. So if I was a bedside nurse or a clinical nurse, and then I moved into administering a clinic, or then I moved into doing home infusion and teaching it for 7 different sites, and then I moved into the international field because I'd already done international and IV, moving into it for a large GPO, group purchasing organization, and monitoring their program for all of their hospitals, and then getting into some work in the former Soviet Union and Central and Eastern Europe and other countries, and then starting a not-for-profit. So as you start to move into all of those places, you collect great stories. You meet the most amazing people in your life who contribute the content for you. It's just a matter of repurposing content and repurposing stories and making it something that just jumps off the page and becomes exciting. So I don't know if I answered your question, but as I said, I do it differently from other people. I always work from a prospectus. That's something that I was taught by Lippincott, which is Wolters Kluwer, from the medical books or the nursing books that I wrote years ago. So I know to write a competitive analysis of what I'm competing against and what else is in that market and what makes mine better than somebody else's. And even if I'm doing it myself in self-publishing, I still go through that process as a tool on my own. Cynthia, did you want to add to that about how long it usually takes somebody to write a book?
No, I will tell you it differs based on the authors. But you do start usually with the concept and then you do the competitive analysis. And then, if that is going to fly, then you actually do the listing of contents in general, bullet or small paragraph form. Then you determine whether you're the author or whether you want contributing authors and how you want that to happen. And then you begin your request for contributing authors. Then you begin accepting in and writing your own content. And then, of course, there is the tightening up, the firming up, and refitting, and then you've got the your own editing, and then you've got formal editing process and copy editing, and then you've got formatting, and then of course you go to press.
And it's a long process. I worked with Sigma Theta Tau and Nursing Knowledge International on a couple of different books. I always enjoyed working with them because they always thought that I was super organized, but I became organized because I was organized and pushed in that way through Lippincott. So I had experience with those kinds of publishing houses that really are very demanding. Now, Candy and I are doing a book now, and we're doing it collaboratively as editors on a book that has contributing authors from our conference that occurred last November. And we're just in the beginning of that process. We've just sent out our template to the contributing authors, and we're just working on that. We do have graphics, we do have a cover, we do have a name. It's better to think positive thoughts. Remember, optimism, the glass is always more than half full. Mine is. And think optimism. I published something recently, and it was just a Facebook post that talked about the whole concept of the weight of a glass. And the weight of a glass is really based on how heavy that glass is in your hand. If it's holding you back and dragging you down, slowing you down, intimidating your progress, that glass is really, really heavy. But if it is lightweight, it feels like absolutely nothing. You've been able to work with it and move it forward and do what you need to do and really be your very best. That to me is what simplifies it. That's what makes it special. David, did you want to say something about the whole business mentoring piece?
Sure. I mean, I think you tackled some really important issues about mentoring. We do a lot of one-on-one business mentoring with people that are either middle class or lower middle class that are looking to move up in the world and trying to figure out what their next step is in life. And Steve and I do that and hopefully help people that way. And I think that your book really tackled some of those issues for people that would be interesting for people to read.
Thanks very much. I appreciate that. And Kadisha, you work in mental health. What do you think about the entire pandemic and how that has impacted people?
It's been a daily struggle for people inside and outside of the hospital because they're dealing with so many different issues on so many different levels, and then to come into the hospital and try to hold it all together at the same time, it's been hard for people. But there's also been a lot of resilience, and a lot of creativity. So people have also realized that we're in this together, which has been a big theme where I'm at. No matter what, we're in this together. So all hands on deck and everybody participates. But to say it hasn't been a challenge, it's been really, really tough.
Heidi is in talent management and deals with that issue all of the time.
I lead global talent acquisition for a publicly held company. And I think we've seen a lot of things happening in the workforce over the last several months. So there have been a lot of layoffs. There's been a lot of anxiety. There's been a large number of folks applying to jobs that they may not be a fit for out of feelings of desperation and really trying to find work. I think what we've seen over the last 3 to 4 months is that the climate has shifted and there are more job openings these days. But again, I think because there are so many people who've been impacted by a reduction in force or have been furloughed, it's really tough to kind of get into an organization and get your foot in the door without leveraging your communities and your networks. For example, with the typical job posting, you may see somewhere between 50 and 100 applicants in a normal year. And these days we may see 500 to 600 applicants come in, and there's just no way to get through that level of volume. So I think you see a lot more people reaching out to communities on LinkedIn. You see a lot of folks talking about open roles they have, and a lot of recruiters talking about how they can, possibly help people improve their resumes and get connected. So I think it is really we're all in this together. Like Khadijah said, in the working world too, and everybody's trying to do what they can to help people get into organizations and get their foot in the door and back in the workforce.
Right. And what about you, Marla? You're a psychologist. What have you seen?
Well, I'm looking at it from a few different angles. As a couples therapist, I've been working with families who are stuck in the house together, and there's been a lot of conflict and having to do remote learning, and there's been a lot of parent-child conflict and a lot of partner conflict. And that goes beyond the pandemic to the whole political climate as well. Has been really, really difficult. People are just feeling a tremendous amount of anxiety and uncertainty about what's going to happen. And like Dr. Khadijah said, it's bringing a lot of mental health issues, and the people who are the helpers are struggling with mental health issues. As a clinician, I can't find an opening when people are calling for referrals. I have a team of 4 clinicians who work in my practice, and we've never been in a position where we couldn't find a referral for someone. And we work really hard to do that if we can't fit them into our own caseload. And it's difficult, even with telehealth, which means, people can work with people across state. And, the states have been really great about loosening the laws around that so that, we can see people all over. Still am struggling to find referrals. So it's really intense, and mental health professionals are burned out, and some of them will likely, leave the field or want to do something else because they've just been, really burnt out.
Right. And Kimberly, you're in construction. So what have you seen?
Well, I haven't had a lot of ability to go out into the field. I've actually stayed away from that for quite some time. But yesterday I had a safety meeting, and our superintendents and field workers we were all together. We all had masks on, and we're 6 feet apart. But it just was so wonderful to actually see them, talk to them. I really wanted to hug everybody. But everybody was, together again, and it felt really good. I have to say I'm very, very excited about the vaccines, and I hope they can find a way to really get those out quickly, and it happens. I'm just, I'm just grateful for that, and grateful that we're considered essential. We didn't have to lay anybody off.
That's great. That's really exciting.
Yeah.
Because I know it was a concern early on. We had talked about that when I had done those programs for you. So I totally get it. Anne Marie, you've just transitioned back to this area. And didn't you come, was it before or after the pandemic started, from Columbus back here?
I came after. I worked in the pandemic in Columbus in March, April, and May. So I relocated in June. All of what you've said and the others that have contributed, we are in a state of transition, and the number of suicides and mental health issues is really so serious. And on the news tonight, when they said that, a Capitol Hill policeman and a Washington, D.C. policeman and others have committed suicide. So what you're saying about reinvention should give people hope. And if they don't have energy in order to do it, they really need to reach out to Marla and others. So I think that your book is so timely.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Terry, did you want to add something?
in the legal profession, so many of the attorneys have been able to work remotely. However, it has really caused a tremendous amount of mental health issues because they're so removed from people and personal contact. We're seeing that all over the place. And I really think if I were practicing today, I would make an effort to see if I could go in or at least get a group of people together so we could talk through some issues more frequently. Zoom calls are nice, but it really doesn't substitute for seeing somebody close and personal.
Exactly. I think you're exactly right. And then there's also Zoom fatigue from too much Zoom, like the call that Cheryl and I have been on for days now. It just, at one point, it becomes too much. So if you're on Zoom from 8 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock at night, that's a long time. Think about the impact on kids who are homeschooling and having to deal with the pressure and the tension. I think that we're all in a situation that certainly has been really dramatic.
Like Anne Marie, I also had the interesting experience of moving long distance. In my case, I wasn't allowed to go back to California. I had to do it all by FaceTime and relying on the realtor. And what I found was that I wasn't only one who was stressed. All the people who are moving, and that doesn't stop. And if you're from California, there seems to be a lot of people moving out of California. It's gotten so expensive. The other people who are stressed, and y'all might know that, is the escrow people, the people who are coming to the inspections for the homes, the people who you might want to hire to pack and move you. My goodness, it is for that, like I will agree, a very timely book.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. Thank you for that message, Marla. Marla put in the chat box, if you go to chat at the bottom of the page and click on it and open the chat box, she put on the link to the review page as a reminder for each of you. I'll also send it to you in an email thanking you for being here with me this evening, but I truly appreciate it. Any more comments? Anyone have anything else to add? So you understand that this is a book that is for everyone, everywhere, anytime, but especially now.
I think, we've been talking a lot about the challenges that people are experiencing in this day and age of COVID and isolation and lack of personal contact. But I think there also have been some benefits. A number of corporations that were entirely, you have to show up, you have to be there in person, are now rethinking that. And some people will be able to work from home or have a hybrid type of schedule. And some people may really enjoy that. I've found personally that 2 of the last 3 presentations I've given as a speaker have been to over 1,000 people. And that would have been far more difficult in person because you feel like you can have a personal touch with them, even though it's a huge amount of people. So I do think there are some good things. And when we get a little down about what's happening, I think it's also very positive to be able to consider, well, all right, there's that side of it, but what have we learned? What have we gained? What's been good about this? And because it's not all been bad.
No, and I never meant to insinuate that it was all bad. It's not all bad. There are some really high moments. I have great opportunities, for example, to do virtual programs for my clients and to offer content that's a spinoff of content I might have offered in the past, but repurposed and customized specifically for that given audience. But I want everyone to be aware of the fact, and those of you who speak for a living understand this, it takes just as much work, if not more work, to prepare for a virtual presentation than it does for a live face-to-face in an audience, in an auditorium, in a conference hall with thousands of chairs presentation. People are just stressed. For me, that's a good thing because I work in stress and crisis management. For me, that keeps me busy. But for everyone else, it does become a real challenge. And regardless of who we are and the space in which we work and our family situations, all of which may be so, so different. You know, when you think about adult kids returning home because they can't afford to live where they were anymore, how crowded can that household be? What once was substantial for a set of adult parents, empty nesters, suddenly has become very, very crowded. So I think that everyone views this from a different set of eyes and ears, from a different perspective, and understands that first of all, we're all lucky to be alive and well, that we've survived this far and will survive even beyond, that the vaccine situation on the horizon is looking more promising each and every day, and that this too shall pass. But in that process of this too shall pass, we also need to look at the concept of, is it time to reset? Is it time to move on? Should I reinvent, or what's next?
This is Frank DiBartolomeo. I just wanted to say a couple of things, Sharon, if I could.
Absolutely.
I'm probably an outlier to everybody here. I'm an engineer and I work in the IT industry for one of the government's 3 letters in the area, 3-letter agencies. And we've gone on a blue gold team, blue team, gold team format. This week I'm home, I'm on the blue team. Next week I'll be in work. And it's going to happen until this time, until 15 March. Fortunately, we, because of the government funding, we have not missed a paycheck at all. So I'm very grateful for that. And I know that there are a lot of people hurting out there. But I just want to say that obviously we have people reinventing themselves because of COVID. But even before COVID was here and after COVID is gone, people are going to have to reinvent themselves. The current situation, we know that there are going to be jobs lost in certain industries, and they're going to have to reinvent themselves. Instead of just sitting back and saying, wait till the industry comes back, it may never come back. So I think your book, Sharon, transcends the COVID crisis. Certainly that's first and foremost in our minds now, but it transcends that. There's lessons in that book that will live on for years and years.
That means a lot, because there is a message there for everyone. The intention was a message for everyone. And I'm glad that it's meeting that purpose. Jeanette, did you have something you wanted to add before we close?
I was just, when you were talking about doing Zoom presentations and whatnot, I have 3 children that are teachers who have had to do virtual teaching, have to do in classroom teaching, 1 week one thing, 1 week another thing. If 3 kids in a school come down with COVID in our state or in our county, that school is closed for 1 week at least. So, you know, it affects everyone in a different way. And I think they learned a lot. But on top of that, they then have their own children to deal with who are at home trying to do things virtually. So you're absolutely correct. It's a time of transition, a time of change. And that's one thing that stays the same, change. Mm-hmm. And we just have to learn how to live with it, right?
And change is a matter of choice, and it's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need to make those tough choices and move on and do what we need to do. And that's the whole purpose of this concept. So our time is running short. I really appreciate all of you being with me here tonight. I'm going to lift my glass one more time. Just drink a little bit of my white, bubbly, sparkly grape juice. I'll welcome your recommendations. I'm going to send you the link along with a follow-up note. And thank you once again. I hope you enjoy the book. I hope you share it with your friends. Be safe, be careful, be well, and God bless you. Thank you. Hi, this is Sharon Weinstein, and what a great party we just had. This evening was the launch party for Are You Ready to Reinvent Yourself? And what a great party it was. I appreciated the comments and the feedback from each and every one of you, and I'm so delighted to have you on my team as part of the process, ready to create a review and move this book forward. I appreciate your time, for giving of yourselves, for your devotion to the process, and for being a member of my team. Thank you so very much for celebrating with me. I toast my glass of sparkling white grape juice to each and every one of you. Thanks again.